A new list of more than 10 strategic enterprises that will expand their presence in the city will be made public next month. The government expects the number of mainland tourists visiting Hong Kong during the National Day Golden Week will top 1.2 million. And Israel intensifies airstrikes at Lebanon and Gaza as pro-Palestinian protests are held in cities around the world. Hello, I'm Melissa Hekalea, and this is TVB News. Financial Secretary Paul Chan says a new list of more than 10 strategic enterprises that will expand their businesses in Hong Kong will be announced by the government next month. He believes the market sentiment has improved recently, which may have encouraged more companies to go public. Timothy Lee tells us more.
Financial Secretary Paul Chan noted on his latest blog post that the Office for Attracting Strategic Enterprises will announce next month a new list of companies that are set to expand in the city. More than half of them are involved in artificial intelligence and big data industries and originate from the mainland, the US, and Europe. Chan added the market sentiments in the SAR has significantly improved during recent times, with the Hang Seng Index having reached its highest point in around 2.5 years. He said the combination of economic stimuli recently unveiled by mainland authorities and the start of the rate-cutting cycle in the U.S. played a role in the positive market sentiment. He believes many local companies, particularly those involved in innovation and technology industries, will be encouraged to go public. The finance chief revealed that he will lead a delegation to the Middle East again at the end of the month to strengthen the city's ties and cooperation with its partners in the Arab world. Speaking on a TVB program, Stuart Leung, chairman of the Real Estate Developers Association of Hong Kong, believes that property prices in the city have bottomed out. He noted prices could rebound at the end of the year or early next year, unless the local economy is further impacted by an escalation in international conflicts. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Director of Immigration Benson Kwok said about 980,000 mainlanders visited the city over the past 5 days during the National Day holiday. Mimo Singhai reports.
The week-long National Day holiday ends on Monday. The government predicts the total number of mainland visitors in Hong Kong over the period to about 1.2 million. Speaking on a radio program, Director of Immigration Benson Kwok said he believes the final figure will match their prediction. He said there are now 19 e-channels at the immigration hall of the West Kowloon station to prevent overcrowding at the border control point. Kwok said total passenger traffic this year could reach 300 million. He also said the department has signed a memorandum with the Hong Kong Applied Science and Technology Research Institute on creating new systems for crossing the border. Meanwhile, Kwok said the department had denied entry to around 23,000 people trying to enter the city in the first 9 months of the year. We suspected the motives of coming here. We need to ensure the safety of Hong Kong, he said. Mims 9, TVB News.
A man fainted while riding his bicycle at Pak Shek Kok. He was sent to hospital where he remained unconscious. Police Commissioner Raymond Su said the bicycle-related casualties in the first 8 months of 2024 have dropped year on year, but fatalities have increased. A bicycle was seemingly left behind on the Pak Shek Kok promenade. Police received reports at around 10 a.m. about a 68-year-old man fainting and crashing his bike while traveling from Taiwan to Science Park with his friend. Sources said the man regularly uses his bike and has a record of high blood pressure and cardiovascular disease. This, as Police Commissioner Raymond Su pointed out that bicycle-related deaths grew from 4 people in the first 8 months of last year to 8 in the same period this year. He said most of those who died were not wearing helmets. Israel has intensified airstrikes at Lebanon and Gaza as its forces continue to target Hezbollah and Hamas, respectively. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has hit out at France and others over a potential arms embargo. And Iran says it is pursuing ceasefire talks for Lebanon and Gaza. Nazvi Karim with more.
Lebanese and Syrians negotiate a deep crater left by an Israeli airstrike at the Masna border crossing, joining the two countries. Some are coming, some are going. Syrian refugee Issa Hilal from Aleppo is fleeing Israeli airstrikes and returning to his home country. He said he had spent 2 days on the road. Expensive, he said, without water, but thanking God. Ibrahim Nasruddin, a Lebanese, is going the other way. He wants to return to check on his house in Lebanon and see if his relatives are still there. Lebanese authorities say around 1.2 million people are displaced, either from southern Lebanon, where Israel has started a ground incursion, or from Beirut, where airstrikes continue unabated, or from the eastern Bekaa Valley. Israel says its forces are only targeting strongholds of the Lebanese group Hezbollah, like this tunnel, which Israel's military says is in southern Lebanon. Hezbollah and Israel have been exchanging fire across the border since October 7th, forcing tens of thousands of Israelis in the north to become displaced. Israel wants them to return to their homes. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi was in Damascus for talks with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. He said Tehran is working with several countries in trying to secure a ceasefire for Lebanon and Gaza, without offering details. Lebanon's foreign minister said from Paris that Beirut had supported a French-US proposal for a ceasefire before Israel assassinated Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah.
They don't have red lines. They never had red lines. They didn't have red lines in Gaza, and they won't have red lines in Lebanon. But in Lebanon, military speaking, it will be harder on them to enter, and they are paying also a big price.
This as French President Emmanuel Macron threatens to curtail arms supplies to Israel.
All civilized countries should be standing firmly by Israel's side. Yet President Macron and some other Western leaders are now calling for an arms embargo against Israel. Shame on them.
Meanwhile, in Gaza, an Israeli airstrike on a mosque in northern city of Jabalia killed 19 people. Almost 42,000 people in Gaza have been killed since a Hamas-led raid on Israel on October 7th triggered the regional conflict. With the anniversary of that attack falling on Monday, the fighting continues with no clear end in sight. Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
This week sees a year since the start of the war in Gaza. Many cities around the world have seen protests over Israeli occupation of the Gaza Strip as troops aggressively hunt down Hamas fighters. The conflict began after Hamas led attacks on southern Israel on October 7th last year. David Garrett reports.
During the last 12 months, there have been protests most weeks around the globe against Israel's war with Hamas in Gaza. The numbers grew and grew in the Australian city of Sydney. Palestinian sympathisers wanted to show their anger after a year of death and destruction. Health authorities in Gaza estimate an average of 800 people have died each week since last October.
5 women in our family, his cousins, my aunties, and second cousins who were slaughtered in a massacre in Gaza. They have survived an entire year of bombs. They have been displaced. The entire camp is rubble. They have buried family, and now the death has caught up to them.
In Indonesia, thousands of men and women waving Indonesian and Palestinian flags marched towards the heavily guarded US embassy in Jakarta. 1,000 officers blocked the route. These people say they had to show their fury at the Israeli ally on the eve of the October 7th attacks that prompted Israel's invasion. In Italy, police and pro-Palestinian demonstrators clashed. Protests calling for a ceasefire in Gaza turned violent. A small group pushed towards the centre of Rome, where they had not been allowed to gather. Tear gas filled the air. Bottles were thrown, prompting a charge by police. Around 30 officers were injured. A small number of demonstrators were reported hurt. Thousands on the streets of Paris again, marching in several large groups and speaking with one voice.
C'est stop génocide, free Palestine, halt au génocide, Palestine libre.
The Palestinian flags were joined by those of Lebanon this time, as these people say that nation now faces the Israeli war machine. Hands off Lebanon, they shouted, blaming Western powers, including France, for being complicit in Israeli attacks. Emmanuel Macron was blamed here along with the German Chancellor in a small but no less keenly felt protest in Serbia. A few hundred took up the main square in Belgrade to express similar outrage. A sit-down protest in Mexico, just one of several mass demonstrations seen across Latin America, including in Ecuador and Chile, as a global movement became apparent.
Time for peace, international law, and justice. The United Nations is fully committed to achieving these goals. In the midst of so much bloodshed and division, we must hold on to hope. Let us honor the memory of the victims, reunite families, and end the suffering and violence in the whole Middle East.
And in Israel, where throughout the last year there have been calls by some for their government to stop its military occupation of Gaza and get a deal done to bring hostages home. David Garrett, TVB News.
Still ahead, storm-related floods hit northern Taiwan. In Hungary, protesters call the state broadcaster a factory of lies. And a look at the problem of osteoporosis among the elderly in the city. Welcome back. Taiwan's outdoor sculpture gallery, the Zhuming Museum, suffered flooding because of Typhoon Krathon. Floodwaters flowed into the Zhuming Museum in New Taipei. In some areas, the water was more than 2 meters deep. The museum said many artworks were damaged by the rainstorms brought by Typhoon Krathon. While the cost of the damage remains unclear, the museum said it would close the site for a week to carry out maintenance work. Thousands of Hungarians took to the streets to protest against what they say is a propaganda network that gives undue prominence to Prime Minister Viktor Orban. The movement, led by opposition leader Peter Magyar, says the state broadcaster gives too much airtime to government officials and its analysts repeat their views. Many gathered outside the headquarters of the state television, calling the institution a factory of lies. Some held up cartoons lampooning Orban's use of power and influence. Orban's party has also used media buyouts by government-connected business tycoons to build a pro-government media empire. There was a call for another demonstration on October 23rd when a national holiday commemorates Hungary's failed revolution against the Soviet Union in 1956. A Cathay Pacific plane traveling from Hong Kong to New York had to make an urgent landing at Tokyo's Haneda Airport. According to a flight tracking website, flight CX-840 turned back while flying across Japan and landed in Tokyo at around 1:40 a.m. local time. The plane departed from Hong Kong at 5 p.m. yesterday and was originally scheduled for a 15-hour flight to New York. Cathay said the flight was diverted because a passenger felt unwell and required treatment at hospital. More than 5,000 local senior citizens have evaluated their risk of developing osteoporosis using a tool introduced by the University of Hong Kong. The Chinese osteoporosis screening algorithm, or COSA, is a risk prediction tool specifically designed for the Chinese population. About 1,600 of the seniors tested were categorized as high-risk osteoporosis patients. Mimo Sungai reports.
Osteoporosis is often regarded as a silent disease. Patients cannot detect symptoms until a bone is broken, but the disease can be prevented if it's detected early. Between April and August this year, HKU's Department of Pharmacology and Pharmacy, as well as medical and social organizations, arranged an osteoporosis screening for 5,771 senior citizens aged 50 or above. Using the risk prediction tool, Chinese osteoporosis screening algorithm, or COSA, about 1,600 elderly were categorized as high-risk osteoporosis patients. They were referred to doctors for a DXA scan, a standard X-ray test to measure measure a person's bone density. Researchers also said 80% of the test takers had insufficient knowledge about osteoporosis. Meanwhile, 56% had never had a DXA scan due to their lack of information about the inspection. Females are often at a higher risk of having osteoporosis compared with males.
Women usually after menopause. For example, postmenopausal women, they have a sudden drop in the female hormone, estrogen. And we know that estrogen is very important for bone health. Therefore, if they do not have sufficient estrogen in the body, they will have a higher chance in developing osteoporosis afterward.
Chen said diet and exercise can determine a person's bone health.
Weight-bearing exercise. So, for example, running, jogging, jumping, diet is very important, especially calcium, vitamin D.
Chen said authorities need to conduct more education work on the disease to raise public awareness. Mainland 9, TVB News.
That's the news. Thanks for watching. Have a great evening.